This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
We are back. Daily Leader is back.
Daily Leader's back. We're still in the podcast game. The statistics, TJ, on this are Nikki from the More Network, who obviously we're going to interview Nikki someday, and which will be a lot of fun.
So fun.
She was telling me, like, I don't know, a gazillion % of podcasts don't make it past episode 20. So
this is
you and I are
17, 18. What is this? I don't know. It's around there, right?
I don't know. Let's just record 10 short episodes today. That way we can hit the number.
We'll just crush them out. That's awesome. That's good. Well, today, first, hey, shout out. Thank you to all of our people who make this podcast happen, just like Nikki. Super grateful. Today on the Daily Leader, it's a little different. As you guys know, cheers, chink. We mostly do interviews of fantastic leaders, and we're going to do the same today. We're going to do an interview of another fantastic leader, but that leader is going to be you, Brad. So I'm excited for this. For our listeners to know, Brad has no idea what I've prepared. Like none, right? You don't have any idea. And if we go all the way back...
I don't, and I was frustrated about that last night.
Yeah, you couldn't sleep over it, huh?
I felt frustrated because I have no idea what to expect today.
Oh, God, I love that for you. Anytime you're frustrated, I'm happy. That's the way I live my life. I kind of felt like, this is like the song that should be playing here is, this guy, right? We just need a little theme music here. Maybe Jesus and them can take over this.
I love it.
So I'm hoping that that's still playing right now. I'm hoping that they get that rocking because I'm excited to be interviewing you today, man. And we're going to learn from Brad. So this is not a lounge episode. This is not a normal episode. This is kind of getting back to the heart of our podcast and why we started. Because you have a big heart for people. You have a big heart for leadership. You have a big heart for business. So anything else our leaders should, or everybody out there should know before we kind of jump in here, man?
Give us an update on the twins, man. That's the only thing I want to make sure the listeners know where you're at with the the twins.
Yeah, man. The twins, they're live. They're kicking.
That's why we paused for 4.5 weeks.
I know. Yeah, we did. We had twins.
Yeah, everybody's healthy. How's Mama?
Mama's good. Mama's doing well. Mama's got less sleep than anybody else in the whole house. But she is a friggin' champ and a half, man. I mean, she is crushing it. She is crushing it. So, yeah, man, we are alive and living, breathing, which it's a lot. Twins is a lot, but man, super grateful at the same time. So, and you're about to have babies too. Like everybody is. Jesus just had a baby. You're about to have babies. How many weeks are you?
Yeah, man.
Like 3 weeks?
We're probably 2 weeks out. Probably 2 weeks out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. We all just decided around the same time, like, let's just all have kids, man. Which I think was great.
That's the Labor Day weekend last year,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. There you go.
Yeah, it's just an exciting weekend for a lot of people.
Just a fun weekend. Yeah, that's right, man. That's right. So, yeah, dude. All right. Well, let's jump in. Let's grill. You grilled me. If we go all the way back to our first episode, you kind of grilled me, put me in some tough paradoxical situations, of which we now call a rapid fire slow burn. I think because it's supposed to be rapid fire, and we've realized when we do that, it's kind of a slow burn. So we're going to do a little bit of that today, but we're not necessarily going to do that. We're going to have some fun. We may tell some jokes like, hey, Brad, why did the scarecrow become a great leader? Do you know why, Brad?
I don't know.
Oh, Brad, he was outstanding in his field.
Tell us all. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
The scarecrow was outstanding in his field. Yeah, thank you.
Your dad, we're going to have to endure this.
That's right. So, no, what I want to do, I want to give our listeners a little bit to get to know you first. So, more on a personal level, and then we'll get into business. So, rocking and ready?
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, let it rip, man.
All right, Brad. First question that I have for you on the day. What is Brad McDonald's favorite type of gum?
Oh, man. It's the Orbit. It's
Oh wow.
it's the old school. It's the old school Orbit Wintermint. All right.
Okay, there it is. There
Orbit,
it
we'd
is.
love for you to sponsor the Daily Leader podcast if that's something you do. We have like 12 listeners per episode, but
So it's definitely worth
they
your
all
money.
chew gum.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Orbit.
Yeah. This is it, man. This is it. I won't pop one in right now, but
okay.
you know.
Yeah. And no leader ever needs to have bad breath. Like that's the worst way to have a, one-on-one conversation with somebody and they can't focus, right? All right.
Agreed.
Brad, you
Big
passed.
no-no.
Orbit gum. I feel like we're learning so much about you. Talk to me, Brad. I know the answer to this one. What is your favorite movie?
Oh man. It's a toss up between Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me, and Tommy Boy.
That is so telling.
That's not something that the internet needed to know, but
yeah, we're getting real personal here, Brad. I remember years ago you telling me that your favorite movie might be Tommy Boy. Makes a little bit more sense, but when you said Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, I lost it. Like we're getting ready for a big lunch rush at the restaurant, and I lost it. I just thought that was the funniest thing I've heard in my entire life. So
yeah,
which I haven't seen in like 20 years.
No one expects that one.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Brad, are you married? Talk to me about that.
And indeed. In fact, Beck and I got married on December 20th, 2014. We just celebrated 9 years this past December. Man, so right now I'm game planning the 10th anniversary coming up at the end of this year.
Okay.
So
yeah, you're going to tell the internet your big plans for you and your wife. Is it a surprise? You got like, hey, we're going to Rome.
I could because she wouldn't listen to this episode and she wouldn't know. So it's not for fear of her finding out. But no, I won't.
That's good.
Not Rome.
That's
not
good.
going to Rome.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you have kids, Brad. Tell us about your kids. I just want to know a little bit more about your kiddos.
Indeed. So we got JJ. He's 4. He's a ton of fun. Very, very curious right now. Heidi's 2. And then we have a daughter due in like 2 weeks. So getting really excited about that. I haven't picked out a name yet. So,
kind of
send names.
Oil on that.
And actually, by the time this podcast dropped, we're kind of starting to push our timeline a little bit. But by the time this podcast release, baby girl will probably already be here and named. So
Yep. It's coming up real quick here, man. Couple 2-3 weeks. Yeah. Love it. All right. We're going to switch. We're going to keep going questions. I'm going to give you some of these more fun questions. We're probably going to get to like at some point, hey, Brad, tell us your deepest, darkest secret you've never shared with anybody in your life. So just buckle up. All right. Questions are going to get more challenging. So we're going to do this first. If you could have any superpower in the world, if you could be, fly, invisibility, what would you be? What would you have?
Oh man. Probably the ability to read people's minds. Even though I feel like that would be a depressing superpower to have. I feel like if Josh Kalspeak was my therapist, that I'd be able to manage. But I just feel like there'd be so many advantages in your life if you could read people's minds.
That's true. There might be a few disadvantages too. Like I did not need to know that that's what that person actually thought about me,
Right.
Yeah. Or all the things that my wife does.
Yeah, it would be tough. It'd be tough.
Yeah. All the things that our wives do.
Yeah, you'd be burdened with.
That might. Yeah. Okay, so let's pivot that. So if you could have one superpower to help you lead, what would that be and why?
Oh man, that's good. Well, I think reading people's minds would definitely be the greatest competitive advantage as a leader. So I would hold that answer, but if I had to pick something different, I think I would go with something having to do with empathy, a superpower related to empathy, to basically be able to like the superpower would be able to perfectly understand what someone meant when they were making a statement or communicating. Yeah. Because I feel like if I could do that, I would always have an accurate understanding of what someone was trying to convey. And that would be similarly to reading their mind, I guess. But I think more often what I see with leaders is that conflicts arise from poor communication. And so anything that would help me basically be the best communicator I could possibly be, I think would dramatically improve my ability to help other leaders.
That's great, man.
Yep.
That's great. So superpower of empathy to be able to really navigate conflict, right? I mean, any conversation, but in particular, those really hard ones, and, make sure that people are fully heard and understood. That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty good answer. I will accept that one. I will accept that answer, and we can move on. So we're going to dive back into the fun side just for a minute. So give me one of your most embarrassing leadership moments that you've ever had. Doesn't have to be in business. Could be from, back when you're, if you've ever led youth group, people in high school, wherever it is. What's a great story about Brad?
Well, this one's embarrassing. One time I had a guy accuse me of something that was like totally untrue. And instead of like responding with like a question, I just absolutely went nuclear and like completely berated him. Like I just went completely unhinged, screaming, yelling, cursing, like all 9 yards. I just absolutely lost my mind. And so looking back, I've used this example a couple times and with clients and things like that, of like, obviously it's a great example of like what not to do. And there are many people I think who can make it through a career in leadership and not have that problem or not, treat someone that way. That's not been the case for me. I've had multiple instances where my temper and my ability to control myself, my words, especially in conflict, have really like betrayed me. And so it's, and something I look back and I feel very guilty for, and obviously I apologized, for my behavior with that individual. But I think knowing that you're capable of behaving that way can actually be helpful to guard against letting yourself get to a point where you're that angry, frustrated, and out of control. And so now, since then, I haven't done it again since then, which I'm grateful for. And I don't plan on ever behaving that way again, obviously. But that's definitely, without a doubt, the most embarrassing thing as a leader that I've ever done. And like having to face that individual after that when I behaved that way was like really humbling. And having to face, at the time, the individual I was working for, who I obviously had to tell him what I did. I had to tell a couple of other individuals on my team what I did and kind of take ownership and accountability for it. And so that's definitely, in terms of like a funny, embarrassing thing, I've misspoken a lot communicating, like in front of people, like on stages or like in workshops or speaking environments where like I've said some things that I'm like, oh, that did not come out right. So I think there's always those great opportunities to like the other day I was doing a speaking engagement in Atlanta and I put doo-doo on my slide instead of to-do. And I thankfully, like I knew the people. I did. Yeah. I had to share that one because it was so bad. And they just like absolutely were ruthless to me. In the moment, it was like tomatoes, man. It was like, but I knew a majority of the people in the room and have had a long-standing relationship with that organization. So it was fine. But had that been like, a speaking engagement in front of, a large audience of people I didn't know, it definitely would have been more like heavy feeling of shame and like humiliation,
Yeah.
So I've got a handful of those too, for sure.
That's great. What I love. Okay, so first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. What I found amazing is twofold. One, I was going more so for a funny story, and you had the courage and the bravery to be vulnerable with us and share something where you actually really like weren't embarrassed from like, okay, that's embarrassing, funny, I put doo-doo up, but like embarrassing, like, oh, like crap, I lost my temper, and I actually had to make amends for that, and I had to restore some relationships. The most fascinating part to me was when you actually said, hey, the interesting thing that you seem to learn from that is that in understanding that you could do that happened, and you have the knowledge that, okay, I'm capable of doing this and berating somebody before maybe I know the full extent of what's going on. You said, hey, that really seems to inform the way that you are moving forward. So if you have the knowledge of that, you might be able to control that from not happening again. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. When you experience yourself being capable of something that you would typically associate with, people that you might judge, and you realize like, oh wow, like I'm capable of being an absolutely horrific, toxic person if left unchecked. Um, like, yeah, when a leader is screaming, cursing, and doing everything they can to belittle and shame another person, that is toxic behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's like some of the worst things that we can do in a professional environment to kill the culture of a team. And so experiencing my own ears, hearing my own mouth, doing that very thing is very humbling, right? And knowing that, like, man, I'm capable of that kind of behavior. I need to grow. I need to find ways to become disciplined in my mind and in my speech, and I need to find the ability to catch myself when I'm in those moments and I feel my anger rising up and like I'm losing control. I need to find the ability to stop and pause and recalibrate myself in a matter of a couple milliseconds, so that when I'm triggered like that, I don't do the very behaviors that I espouse to be, fighting against every day when we go eradicate the world of bad leaders.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's humbling, man. It's important to just for all of us to recognize, like, man, the right circumstances, lack of sleep, lack of food, not taking care of things that need to be taken care of. Like, we're all capable of just like, we're all right on the edge.
Totally.
And so, we gotta practice,
that's great,
self-control, man, and not make those mistakes.
Yeah, no, I mean, the ditch is always right there for us to drive into, right? And kind of blow things up in our business, in our personal relationships. Like, it lives right there. But I think the coolest part to me and for our listeners, I mean, there's so much wisdom in what you just said. One of the best things that I guess I witnessed you do in talking about this moment is this idea that leaders, a great leader is not a leader that doesn't make mistakes. A great leader is one who makes it right when they have made a mistake. And in that moment, right, you not only said, hey, I lost it. You said, so I had to go back and make it right. And then you learned from it. And like, that's super powerful because that informs how you're going to deal with conflict in the future. Like you said, when you get triggered, hey, give myself that extra, go use one of our tools, the box breathing, if we need, go for a walk, go for a run, do whatever you need to kind of center yourself. Right. If we steal from Shane Kuiper and doing the window of tolerance, like coming back inside, right? Maybe hyper aroused. Let's get back in and kind of recenter yourself. So I just want to thank you for your vulnerability in that, because I think that that's awesome. That's some of the stuff that I think as leaders we tend to bury underneath of like, it's not something I want to talk about because it was embarrassing, but it's actually a strength that you have that you learn so much from that. So that's great. Took it in a totally different direction than the laughter that I was going for. But you still got to say doo-doo on the air, which you should be happy about.
Do on the pod. Yep.
Doo-doo on the pod. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you some fill in the blanks. You can fill it in with a word, a sentence, a phrase, and then you can kind of explain. So we're going to start easier. So the best way to start your day as a leader is to
weigh yourself.
Like on the scale?
Yeah. Yeah, you got to weigh yourself.
Okay.
When you're a leader, it is easy to get fat.
Yeah. You're just so stressed.
It's easy.
Just putting whatever you need in your body.
Dude, yeah. Dude, you got to really be careful. You just got to track. Look, how am I? And the scale, look, I mean, talk to anybody with any real education on physical health, and they'll tell you, hey, look, the scale is your best friend and your worst enemy. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
But what it does is it creates a habit for a leader every morning to say like, hey, I matter, my body matters, and I need to have a habit where I'm, when you've been sleeping for, let's say, 4 to 9 hours, and that range is probably pretty typical for each of us. You know, you haven't eaten, you haven't really had much to drink, and so you just get a good objective, look at where you're at, and you do that every day for a couple of years, and you can start to see patterns, annual cycles, holidays. You can see, hey, this is where I blow up, this is where I get lean. You can start to learn about yourself and about some of your habits and your behaviors. And so I think just telling yourself every day, like, hey, like my body matters, I care about this, I care about my health, and the first thing I'm going to do today is just check in with me on where I'm at. That's how you got to start your day.
Start your day checking in. Check in with yourself first thing. All right.
That's right.
So good answer. Good answer. All right. Leaders are at their best when
they have adequate recovery.
Meaning? That's
when
great.
They engage in adequate recovery. So really, really good. 2 books that talk about this a lot. One is called The Power of Full Engagement. The other is called The Way We're Working Isn't Working. I actually highlight a third that you shared with me called Spark, that you and I really enjoyed, and we've had great conversations about. We've referenced several times on different podcasts. When we're exerting energy at a really high pace and frequency, we oftentimes neglect healthy recovery. So things like, adequate sleep, diet, hydration, time with others where we're not working, just healthy, positive relationships, things like prayer, meditation, learning, whether that's like a book or a podcast or something of that nature. In silence and solitude. I mean, just being alone and quiet, not being on our devices is a huge thing too. What we're finding is not that like a week-long vacation is what we need. It's 3 30-minute breaks a day. That's what we need. It's an actual Saturday or Sunday off with the family, with yourself, to be alone and to exercise, whatever those things that you do to recover and rest are. Leaders are at their best when there's an adequate amount of recovery, and when it's done frequently and in rhythm.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things, you and I talk about a lot as we help leaders, whether that's helping with technology and operations as a consultant, or it's me, doing the same thing, but from a little bit of a different angle. When we don't see leaders recovering, we see teams and cultures suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love that. I think it's something that is starting to be talked about. There's a little bit more conversation, but could always be more. I think so. The interesting thing is it's kind of like, hey, all right, so best way to start your day is to check in with yourself, right? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all those kind of things. And then leaders are at their best when they're also, hey, I've checked in with myself and I know what it's going to take to help me recover and feel rested and ready for the day, right? Because we deal with a lot of high performing people. The problem is even the highest performing sports car will run out of gas and does need an oil change. It can't just run forever, right? I think typically, your and I's experience, I think would be true to go, hey, a lot of the leaders we work with are high performers and thus they run so hard, it's really easy to run out of gas and not perform at your best. And then be on edge personally, professionally, all those kind of things. So bunch of resources out there. Brad mentioned a few books. Spark's definitely something we talked about for that. But yeah, that's really important. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
and something to talk about too real quick, Taylor, is just the fact that most of the people who I know who are high performing because of not only some healthy traits and characteristics that they have in their personality, in their temperament, in their upbringing and like life experience, but also some really unhealthy stuff too. And what can happen, I think, is that when we don't devote time to adequately recovering, it's not the healthy stuff that gets, highlighted and magnified. it's the unhealthy parts that get magnified. So like, even if you go back to my story where, I'm on a call, somebody's accusing me of something that's not true. And rather than me just hanging up and just calling them back when I've calmed myself down, like I choose to indulge, the dark side, the shadow side of my personality that can be very high performing, very hard driving. And I have the ability to take a severe beating. And so those are great things. But what happens is, when left unchecked, and when I'm in an unhealthy place, that can turn against myself and against others, and not be used for their benefit and to create value. It can be used to extract value. And so now that we know that, we can start to say, let's mitigate some of the shadow side of who we are, and let's try to guard against that just as much as we try to elevate and magnify the healthy things.
Yeah. Oh.
So I think that's an important way to look at it as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, there's basically, I think I did one assessment. I can't remember actually the name of this particular one, but it said, hey, we live half of our lives under good circumstances and the other half kind of under stress. So if we are stressed, what are our tendencies when we are stressed? What are our tendencies when we are tired? What are our tendencies when we're in unhealth compared to health? And there's lots of tools out there to be able to help, right? There's a DISC assessment out there. You could be doing the Enneagram. I love all of those. Those are tools to help influence those decisions. They don't fix it, but they at least give us a guideline to go, if I am engaging in this behavior, and that's a behavior that I've said that is not a healthy one for me, that I go to, how do I get back? What do I need to do to help myself get recentered? So yeah, I think that's super powerful, man. That's super powerful. So leaders are at their best when they are in recovery, when they are recovering themselves from all the stress, all the challenges, whatever is going on. So, all right, one last one before we jump into a little bit more about Brad that I want to hear, because I want to hear your story a little bit, and in particular what you're doing as we are wrapping up today. So, the last one that I have for you here is, so the key to leading your team into a healthy culture is?
The key to leading your team into a healthy culture is frequent, honest communication.
Frequent, honest communication. That's great. Can you unpack that? I feel like we've touched on that in some of our podcasts, especially maybe with Corey when we were talking about the trust gap and pizza parties, not being the end all. But talk to me about why frequent and honest communication is so important for the culture in particular of our companies.
Yeah, that's something that I've observed across, especially the last 6 years of my career, in organizations, and in even just teams, like microcosms of organizations, where people are communicating frequently. So they're regular, predictable patterns, right? These rhythms of dialogue, and the makeup of those meetings is honest, transparent, authentic communication, where there's psychological safety and there's trust, where I'm allowed to be, opinionated, and my opinions are accepted as my opinions, and they're validated as my opinions. I have the ability to explore and ask questions, learn. I can make my own contribution to the team, and I can exert value into the team, and that value is reciprocated. And then finally, where I can actually look at the leader or be the leader and receive challenge from other people. Like, that's how we make a healthy culture. And something, this is an interesting aside, but something that I really don't like, I hear about all the time, is how much people hate meetings. And to me, it actually tells me something about the leaders of those businesses and companies. And it tells me something about the values of the people engaged in a team that really hates meeting together. First and foremost is that they don't understand they have a complete lack of understanding around the purpose of a meeting. And then secondly, like the way they're conducting their meetings must be incredibly ineffective.
Yeah.
Because, and then the bigger value question is just like, look, if you're not showing up to work to look at another human being and ask yourself, how can I make value for you? Like, we got a bigger problem. Like, what is it exactly that you're doing walking around the world all day, every day, if you have no interest in engaging with other people and, reciprocating value with them? Like, you may need to kind of do a gut check about what do you actually care about in your life? And I would be one to like challenge that and say like, hey, if you just, if all you want to do is sit behind a screen and pound a spreadsheet, like there's nothing wrong. That's great. That's beautiful. I love that. That's fantastic. But you have to be able to connect with the why behind it. You have to be able to see at some point in time, that you're not like a machine. Like you're a human being who's doing that. Spreadsheet is ultimately creating value for another human doing something around the world somewhere. And we need to stay connected to that if we're going to live to the potential that we have. And I just think, this kind of rebellion against meetings is the wrong thing. It should be a rebellion against wasting one another's time with low value, inauthentic conversation. We shouldn't say, I hate meetings. We should say, I hate inauthentic, dishonest meetings. We should say, I hate meetings that are more frequent than what is actually helpful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it's a good language change for sure. No, I think two things. I think one, it is the way, what I just heard you say is the best way to have a good culture is connection, is actual connection with your team.
That's right.
Right. To where you are connected with them, they're connected with you, and you feel it, which is healthy conversation. That's healthy connection to your why, your how, your what you're doing. That's the best way. And truthfully, a good barometer of that might be your team meetings. If your team meetings and people say on your team, like, God, there's such a waste of time, then we probably have an issue, because that's our biggest opportunity to be able to connect with our team. Right. So there's either an issue in the content, the delivery, the connection. Right. Because I know I've been in meetings with people that you go, God, that meeting was not only enjoyable, right? Like it was informative. It takes a lot of work. It takes you kind of probably getting away from just your agenda as a leader. It takes a lot of work. But it is interesting because I think oftentimes people say, well, healthy culture is, nobody would really say this, but we think it. As much time off as you want. Healthy culture is a kegger at the office that people can just go have drinks. A healthy culture is we take our team away for a cruise every year. And I venture out there to say all of those things can be good additions too, but they do not replace actual connection with you and your team, and you and your team to the vision and direction of the company. Does that kind of sum up what you're saying? Well, because I feel like you had a great answer.
Absolutely. In fact, this is interesting. I'm in a conversation with a guy the other day, and he was reflecting on a company offsite, and the company offsite was in Mexico. Everybody's drinking and just being unthoughtful. The company basically goes to Mexico to party for a couple of days, right?
Yeah.
And every year at the company offsite in Mexico, like terrible things happen. Like they leave and they're like, oh, so-and-so hooked up with so-and-so, and so-and-so said this to so-and-so, and, so-and-so got wasted and, embarrassed himself. And so I think we have to be really careful leveraging those types of experiences, because if those aren't done well, they create a ton of damage to what happens when we get back from the offsite and into the regular working rhythms that we have. And I'm not saying offsites are bad. I'm saying how we do offsites can be detrimental to our company culture if we don't do them with wisdom and discipline and thoughtfulness and strategy, etc.
Yeah, that's good. So they don't replace healthy actually connection to your team and healthy conversation to your team
No
in
way.
terms of being the greatest way to have a healthy culture. And then B is we do have to, like, they can enhance that culture, and would be really careful and wise about how we do those events and what we do. I think that's, dude, there's some really good stuff in there. We could go forever, but I know we're kind of wrapping up today, and I think we're going to do a whole other episode on this next part, or at least a short. But so one of the things that I don't know if everybody knows is you are a fantastic coach / consultant and have your own company called Pattern Talent, where I've been able to watch you grow that, and you work with companies all over the world, doing a fantastic job with some incredible executives, kind of coaching them up. So I'd love to know a little bit about your heart in terms of how that got started, and what got you into that.
Thanks for asking about Pattern. Yeah, so Pattern Talent is my consultancy focused really on two main things. One is helping executives and business owners improve their operations, and the kind of the way into that is typically deals with leadership development, business planning, and really kind of getting down into the nitty gritty tactical level of like, how does your business function day in and day out, and how do we optimize it for leadership development so that you as the leader can trust that the people on the team are growing, they're capable, and they're actually learning how to do the work of developing not only themselves but other people. And most of the time, what happens in companies, especially when they're busy growing operations, is that people get really, really task oriented, and they stop thinking about the process of learning and growing and developing other leaders. And so when they try to go and scale, they find that they can't scale quality, or they can't scale a pricing model. They just get stuck in this place where they can't actually replicate the work of the founder or the top 3 to 5 key leaders. And so I want to help companies, when I'm doing operations consulting, really have this strong flowing pipeline of leadership development so that as they scale their companies, they never really run out of leaders. And they never run out of latent capacity because they're always building it into their operation. And so I do a lot of that. And then the other thing is just executive coaching. And I do executive coaching with young professionals all the way up to, people who are working on planning their exit from their company for retirement. And so, clients in their 60s, all the way down to their 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
And that's
so you
a ton of fun all across the board.
Yeah, you cover a big spread there. I think that's super cool. I think our listeners should know how much value you have to add. I mean, clearly from today's episode, from all of our episodes, you are very well educated. You care about people, and you've been there. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I've watched you do this in numerous places. I've watched you help be on a team and run a team of one of the most efficient QSR, restaurants in all of Arizona, which is fantastic, and helps so much in terms of that in particular store. I've seen you do this in a lot of places. So it's neat now to see you really thriving, helping other people figure out, okay, well, how do I scale this? It's not scalable for me to do all this work in my business. So how do I teach other people to do that, come alongside? And yeah, you've got a very wide range of people that you work with as well. So tell me if I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe I'm considering working with Brad. Like, what are your, key values? Like, what are the most important things about Pattern Talent for you?
That's a great question. The first value, just organizationally, that I've established is reality. You literally use the word reality to describe the process of coaching, and what I'm hoping to convey to any client who works with me in any way is that if we're not honest with ourselves about where our business as well as our personal leadership is at, we're unable to be honest with others, and we're unable to do honest work to advance
Mm.
ourselves. So it would be like, um, just a big waste of time if we didn't get a really clear picture on current state. And so I typically will try to do a discovery call or two, sometimes as many as three, to really understand, like, where is the client actually at? And that first, 1 to 3 hours is pretty critical on how do we actually get real about where we're at and make a plan about where we want to go. And so the word reality comes to mind first. But then I really like to kind of work every company and or person through 4 questions. So the first one deals with character. It asks the question, who am I? And it deals with something like, my own character integrity, my personality, my core values, my purpose. But applied to a company, it has to do with brand identity. Like, who are we as a company? Who are we as a brand? And where are we trying to create value in the marketplace for our clients and constituents? The second one deals with the idea of chemistry. A lot of times when the word chemistry is applied in a business context, it is kind of a thin and shallow perspective. For me, chemistry is about the ability to create high trust relationships and recognizing that there's actually some effective things that we can do, or interpersonally and in business, to develop a pattern of high trust relationships, a reputation of credibility, and healthy, strong relationships, not only internally but also with customers. And then the third question would be one of competence. So you can see my C's coming through here. Competence deals with not only something like skill sets and products and services and the way we create value for other people, but it also deals with like how that value is unique and how it's differentiated. And so that can, again, it can be interpersonal, right? Like, you bring something to my life, Taylor, that none of my other friends or business partners bring. You have this unique way of working in the world because of the gifts and the skills and the talents that you have. And that's true of companies as well. There are companies that have a way of teaming together with people and exercising their skill sets that are very unique. And when we can understand and have clarity around those things, we can communicate them. And that enables us to offer that unique value at a larger scale. And then the last one, again, is a C. I'm sorry. It's capacity. And it deals with my ability to grow and develop myself.
4 C's to success.
Yeah. Well, it's what happens when you're raised by a Baptist pastor, right?
That's right.
Yeah. 4 C's to success. Capacity deals with, though, our ability to grow and develop ourselves as well as other people. My favorite leadership quote of all time is from Simon Sinek, and he says that a leader is someone who makes other leaders. And that's the greatest test of leadership. Not like, can I do something, right? That's not, doing something is not leadership. We all do things. A leader is someone who has the ability to develop other people who know how to do things. Yep. And it's that unique calling and function of a leader that makes them what they are. And so that last C is about giving people an actual process that they can go work in their own life and in the lives of their team in order to help foster that skill set. So that's kind of what Pattern's all about. And that's what we do both on the consulting side and on the executive coaching side.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. I love that your favorite quote, like, the greatest test of a leader is the ability to develop another leader, did 2 things. One, it was one of our first clips and it kind of went viral. Has been awesome. You talk through what that actually looks like and break it down a little bit more practically, which we had a lot of work with that in Chick-fil-A. You've had a lot of work with that in your life. But what's really cool that I think that our listeners or anybody who's considering working with you should know is what you did is you took that and then lived it out. Like, that meant a lot to you in your life. And then your goal is to develop other leaders. So what I know to be true of Brad is at Pattern, you are looking to help develop people and make them super successful. And you've been very successful yourself. And it's just really, really cool to see. You have so much to be able to give to those people. And I've seen that a bunch. So I love that your most powerful, quote and your favorite quote ended up becoming kind of like your guiding light for what you're doing, which is developing other leaders, right? And that's what
Totally.
you do. Pattern Talent is developing other leaders. So if I heard this and I listened and I was like, hey, okay, that guy may look a little funny, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Where would I find you? How do I get to that first consulting meeting? Like, how do I get in touch with you?
Yeah, that's good. Well, I could pull a Shane Kuiper here and just share my address with you and tell you to come over and just knock on my door, like old school. But instead, I will point listeners to patterntalent.co. That's CO no M. Although patterntalent.com is kind of a cool site with actual fabric patterns and other types of patterns that you could go explore.
They have stolen
if you're
273
kind of
your customers. Yeah.
That's right. People are like, oh, Pattern Talent, this is awesome. Yeah. So just remember that .co is the key to get you to the right spot. And that's where you can, get on the calendar, send me an email, all that kind of stuff. The other place I like to point people to is LinkedIn, because, any kind of like thinking that I do, LinkedIn is kind of my open leadership journal. And as I'm exploring ideas and thinking through things, as I'm, reading books and having conversations with people, I'm just posting my honest reflections there. And it's really funny, I get feedback sometimes on my posts on LinkedIn, like, you're not posting the right way, you're not using LinkedIn the right way. And I always think what a funny idea that is.
There's a right way to use
it. For me, my approach to LinkedIn is just, it's just an open, honest, public journal of my reflections on leading people and, growing a consulting business from scratch. And so, that's what you can find there too.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not necessarily trying to monetize your LinkedIn. I've seen you just make kind of honest reflections and posts. Sometimes you post about the podcast, but a lot of time it is what Brad is going through, thinking about, finding interesting, which is cool because you just kind of give that out for the world to know what's going on in your head. And I love that, man. All of that too will be in our show notes. You can find more about Pattern Talent and get connected with Brad. Go to his website, hop on there, set up a time to meet with him, message him on LinkedIn, show up at his house. I'll give you his address if you message me directly on Instagram. Not really. I wouldn't do that to you. But man, I want to spend more time. I'd love to do another episode because I only got through half of the questions that I had for you. But I think that you answered all those with such bravery and so much dense knowledge that it was worth less questions and just kind of drilling down on those. So anything you would like to leave our listeners with for this episode here, Brad? If you could leave them with one thought of the day, what would it be?
Yeah, it would be just asking yourself, a lot of times when we think about leadership and we think about stuff like executive coaching and consulting, we need to remind ourselves that we're actually trying to solve real problems. And sometimes coaching and consulting, it can be a little bit pie in the sky. And I would just encourage anyone who is wrestling with how they're growing their ability to lead others to watch the news or, flip through the news app on your iPhone or device and consider how unimaginably bad it is in the day-to-day life of the world and the general public, and recognize that when you think about the greatest problems in mankind, the solution 98% of the time is better, more empathetic, more trusted quality leadership. That if we actually had people who were leading from a place of health and integrity, most of the problems that we deal with would not exist. They wouldn't be a thing, because there would be someone who is standing in the gap to lead themselves and other people's to a healthy and good place. And so for me, you know, I wake up every day and I just ask myself, like, okay, how can I eradicate the world of bad leadership by helping good leaders get better, mediocre leaders get good, and bad leaders either leave and exit leadership or get honest with themselves about the fact that they're toxic and they need to change and grow. And so, you know, where are you in that process? Where are you in the process of your own leadership development? Are you like me, where you're experiencing yourself in a moment of just straight up doing exactly the thing that you claim to hate and behaving in a way that's toxic? And you recognize, okay, if I don't make some dramatic changes today, I will perpetuate bad leadership across the lives of other people? Or am I like on track and doing really well, and I just need to surround myself with the right help, mentorship, coaching, and information to move me forward faster and help me actually help other people learn how to imitate some of the good things I'm doing? And there's lots of, you know, gradients of development, but I think our ability to articulate where we're at and where we want to go is where I want to point people to really getting good at. And that's what I would leave people with.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. I love it. It's kind of going back to your first thing of, hey, even get on the metaphorical scale here, see where you're at in terms of, you know, your leadership. What do you need? And I love the idea that, like, hey, if we had more great leaders, so many of the problems that we have would disappear because we have great people at the top trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of. I think that's awesome, man. So, Brad, thank you for sharing today. You gave us so much to reflect on, think about. Super excited for this pod to drop. With that, man, it's been another episode. Take to the internets, like, subscribe, follow, share with your mother, your sister, your brother, whoever you want about the podcast. We super appreciate that, and we look forward to you tuning in next time. So, bye everybody. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening.
Bye guys.
And we'll be back again.